episode of Chatty Broads with Becca and Jess.
Okay, so we were just about to start the podcast.
Well, there's breaking news.
There's breaking news because apparently there is a reality TV show, like a competitive reality TV show that's coming out on Fox where these people are going to have to face the ultimate test in a show called Special
By the
Forces.
way, what's the ultimate test? To me, the ultimate test is being on The Bachelor.
Honest to God, that is the ultimate test. You're like, what are you talking about, people? Okay, this cast list,
Dude.
there's a bunch of people, but I'll name a few. Jamie Lynn Spears, Hannah Brown.
Jamie Lynn Spears. I mean, Jamie Lynn Spears is now accepting reality TV show castings. I mean, wow.
Hannah Brown.
Hannah Brown.
Kate Goslin.
Kate Gosling's going to grace my screen again of the famed John and Kate +8. I can't wait. I hope she still has the same hair.
Dwight Howard, Montel Jordan.
Dwight Howard?
Dwight Howard.
What is this? This cast is, I mean, this is actually like low-key a star-studded TV cast.
Oh, yeah. Montel Jordan.
Who's that again?
R&B artist.
Okay.
There's some Olympians, Olympic skier, Gus Kenworthy, gymnast, Natasha Lukin.
Oh, yeah. She's big.
Carly Lloyd. Seventh Heavens, Beverly Mitchell. Real Housewife, Kenya Moore. NBA Hall of Famer, Mike Plaza. And Dr. Drew.
What? And Dr. Drew is competing?
Oh my God. Spice Girl, Mel B.
Wait, Mike Plaza? You mean Mike Piazza?
Mike Piazza.
Mike Piazza.
Shows you how much I know about
Oh my gosh.
the MLB.
What? This is... And Dr. Drew is competing?
I'm like, Dr. Drew, he's like...
He's not hosting?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Wow.
Dr. Drew's like an older man. I mean, granted, I always see
looks
him in the
fit,
gym,
right?
you know what I mean? But like Mel B, Hannah Brown, Jamie Lynn Spears, Kate Goslin,
Wow.
Kenya Moore,
Wow.
Dwight Howard. I mean, this is wild.
Wow.
Well, I am quite excited because, you know, I'm kind of back on my reality TV bullshit.
I personally love competition shows like this. Like, they're kind of my favorite.
Love. Okay, can I give you a suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, Broads, before I give you my new reality TV suggestion, let me tell you one of my biggest pet peeves. Okay, one of my biggest pet peeves is going through my spending at the end of the month and realizing I spent money on subscriptions I forgot I ever even signed up for. Or, okay, let's be honest, subscriptions I signed up for to maybe get a free trial that then I forgot to cancel, or even worse, couldn't figure out how to cancel. It's literally money down the drain.
Well, there's a reason that those companies make it difficult to cancel your subscription and even find out how to cancel your subscription. It's because it works for them. They make more money that way. But Rocket Money will help you get your subscriptions under control. You'll stop wasting your hard-earned money on subscriptions that you don't need. Because that can really drain you of cash month after month.
The Rocket Money app shows you all of your subscriptions in one place and then handles canceling the ones you don't want. Literally, all you have to do is push cancel and they do the rest. No sitting on the phone with customer service or trying to reason with a sales rep. Just one button and you're free.
Get rid of unnecessary and unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/chatty. Seriously, it could save you hundreds of dollars per year. That's rocketmoney.com/chatty. Always.
I had not watched this, even though I had seen like all the posts about it. But you know the show that Blake Horseman was on, All Star Shores, where he met Giannina? Oh my God. It's on Paramount. I binged that show so fast and I was so into it. It is the cast on this. So it's people from all like the different shores. Mm-hmm. So like, Jersey Shore, Angelina. They have they have like a different like Rio. They have one from the UK. So there's all these different people from the different shores casts. There's Vanjie from Drag Race. Giannina Love is Blind. Blake. There are some Love is Blind people. Like, the cast is incredible, and the show is like if you were to combine the Jersey Shore with a competition show, like the Challenge.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like the Real World and the Challenge combine.
Yeah.
So during the evening, these people party their faces off.
Yeah.
Like they are getting trashed.
Yeah.
From day one, and they go hard, okay? They go so hard, and it is so much drama because everyone is just absolutely belligerent.
Yes.
There's major romance going on. Obviously,
Yeah.
Blake and Giannina.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
that whole story. They're still together. It's been like 9-10 months at this point.
Yeah. Things are working out with them.
But then it's a competition show. Wow. So they have all these crazy different challenges that they have to do, and if you don't win, you get sent off to this one area where they it's horrible. They put you in the middle of nowhere. You have to do these horrible, it's studded with excitement and drama, and I highly recommend it. I binged it so quickly.
Interesting.
Binged it so quickly.
You know what though? I'm kind of I don't know if, because I was going to watch F-Boy Island because I really liked season 1. I was going to watch season 2. I have to say I'm a little over that style of show. You still haven't watched Indian Matchmaking?
I know, I need to watch it.
You still haven't watched Love on the Spectrum. I'm kind of more into these higher, both Indian Matchmaking and Love on the Spectrum are kind of like these higher quality, production shows. And the dating is very, real. And so I've really been enjoying those because you're I feel like I'm getting a sense of this person as a person, and I'm like, oh, who could they match up with?
They're both Netflix shows, right?
Yeah.
Netflix really crushes the reality
Did you see
TV
the one
shows.
where people do the same first date with 5 different people?
Yes.
Same similar style production where you're
it's so
really
good.
getting a peek into the real life kind of thing. Very similar production,
Okay.
high quality, just
I need to
very
because
good.
I did start watching Selling the OC.
Oh my God.
Because
it's so funny. I was just listening to a podcast today where someone was talking about it.
Well, I've watched a couple episodes of Selling Sunset. Totally get why people...
It's funny because it started out as an HGTV style show, you know what I mean? Where they were actually selling Sunset, and then it turned into a full-fledged reality show.
And I totally get why people are super into it. It's,
yeah,
drama, the homes, all of that, the luxury. But I just never locked in. But then my little sister was my family lives in Orange County. So my little sister was like, you need to watch this with me. And so I started watching it, cut to me, it being 3 a.m, and I'm watching all these episodes, and I'm so caught up in Selling the OC. It's also, all the real estate agents are 33, 34. Mm-hmm. So these people are all in my graduating classes. Mm-hmm. So I'm do I know you? It's very much like that.
Probably some of the people buying homes too.
And the drama is exceptional.
Top notch.
Exceptional.
It's also fun when it's a place that too,
Yeah, it's fun, but then it also is I was getting stressed out watching it because they were revealing certain smaller cities in Orange County that I would hopefully one day to move back to potentially. Yeah. I'm don't show that. Yeah. People are gonna see it and
I want to be able to afford
that. Stop. Enough. I'm stressing out. Or different restaurants I like, and I'm just no, I can always get a reservation there.
Yeah. Alas.
But speaking of when I was in Orange County, can I tell you this last weekend, I guess now it's been 2 weekends since we're recording this, a week in advance.
Yes.
Can I tell you about a moment where I
have something interesting to tell you. Continue.
I felt so much.
Don't let me forget. I have something to tell you.
Okay. I won't let you forget.
Okay.
I felt so much shame in my... I felt so much shame in my youth just coming back to me and my preteen insecurities.
Oh, no.
I was at the community pool at my mother's home. Mm-hmm. And I was there with my mom and Ember and my grandma. And it was pretty crowded, so a lot of the chairs were taken, but there was a table, and it's, a 4-seater table. It's not very big. Well, all of a sudden, a group of, at first, about 5 13-year-old girls come in, and without even looking any of us in the eye, and we're sitting at the table, they throw all their stuff onto our table.
And you guys are sitting there at the table.
We're sitting there, like chatting, and they throw like they got they're preteen. They got their backpacks, their
little
clothes.
bags, yeah.
They had come in on electric
Towels.
bikes, and they just like throw all their shit onto our table, like to the point that when one of the girls pulled her top off, she threw it and it landed on my lap. And not one time did they look up and acknowledge our existence. And then they all jumped in the pool. And then a group of 10 more came in. And the girls in the pool go, our stuff's there. And the other 10 girls throw all their stuff onto the table. Not one acknowledges our presence. Are you guys just sitting
there like looking at them?
Yeah, I'm in shock. At first, I don't say anything because I'm like, what's going on? And then Becca.
At a certain point, you've got to just like look up and be like, I
was looking at them going,
you were literally looking and no one's paying attention to you.
Yeah. Well, later, it got more drastic. But when that happened, and then they jumped in the pool.
You were like a 12-year-old inside that was getting left out. You're like, why didn't you guys invite me?
I was consumed by it. It was eating away at me. My mom was like, are you ready to go? And I'm like, no. Because I wanted them to leave and have to get their stuff so that I could like say something. Because my 13-year-old self, I've shared before, I'm like, I wasn't like, I didn't feel like I'm like, oh, one of the unpopular
like the
kids
outcast.
or like bullied. But I definitely wasn't ever in like the popular group.
Yeah.
And I did feel in that age in my life, I was very... with people very like introverted where I didn't share a lot. So I think I felt overlooked a lot and I wasn't acknowledged a lot. And it came
flooding back,
rushing back. Yeah. My blood pressure was through the roof. And so they're just swimming there and I'm staring these 13-year-old girls down, just like ready to have a confrontation. And then they're after 45 minutes, they're going to go get some burritos or something. So they all come back and there's, again, now they're like all 14 together around the table, grabbing their stuff, putting their stuff on. No one's looking at me. I'm not joking. I'm inches away from one of them, waving my hands like this back and forth, going, yeah, hello. Not even a glance. Like I was
You've never
truly
felt
invisible.
More insignificant in your life.
I was so insecure with a bunch of 13-year-old girls. And my mom looks at me and she goes, God bless you, Mom, but made it way worse because my mom goes, this is what happens when you get older. The youth, they just overlook you. And I'm like, oh my God.
So what happened? You're waving, just no one notices. You don't acknowledge
nobody.
You.
And then they all leave on their electric bikes. And I was loudly in front of them saying to my mom at this pitch, I cannot believe that not a single one is even looking at us right now. Like that's how loud I was saying that. And nobody was acknowledging it. And by the way, I'm not over exaggerating this at all. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, I believe you.
And I was just like, the insecurities were pumping through my veins. And I had to this is so embarrassing. I had to actively
stop yourself from crying.
Not crying, but I had to actively be like, okay, your daughter's sitting here too, because I wanted to go off.
Yeah,
and
also, but what are you gonna go off on?
Go off once, not to them, but to my mom.
Yeah,
be like these entitled, da da da, whatever. And I had to actively be like, Jessica, these are children, and
they're probably just scared of you.
It definitely wasn't that vibe.
No.
It was more like, you know what? I had to have be filled with empathy where I go, this is parenting. Maybe they don't get attention at home. Maybe they just sit and stare at their phone when they're at home. Whatever it is, maybe their parents.
Maybe they're fucking spoiled ass brats.
Maybe their parents it's super. And I was having to calm myself down. And then as we were walking out, and it was a good reminder, as we were walking out the gate, my mom held the door open so that these 3 women my mom's age could walk in. And she stood there and held the door open for them. And they had to brush past her. They didn't even look at her, acknowledge her existence. And I was like, oh, these are the parents. This is the energy of what this is. And they're just kids. It's not their fault. I was it was a good moment for me to reflect on, to be like, wow, that affected me that much. Like that's,
You were triggered.
that's still in there.
Yeah.
Like that, like really insecure 13-year-old who felt really overlooked and not acknowledged is still in there. Oh man. So weird.
You were activated.
Oh, I was beyond activated. Wow. Beyond activated.
Wow.
And I was like, stay calm, your kids. Now this is, a moment where you can have a conversation with your child about like how important it is to make people feel seen, and how that's not a good example of being like kind and seeing people.
It's also just fucking rude. Like, just don't assume it's your space. They're sitting there. So just say, all you do is, can we put our stuff here? Do you mind?
I would have been like 1,000%, kids, pile it on up.
You'd be like, sit down, have a chat, girl talk.
Just like so embarrassing, mom. Be like, can I join?
I love your suit. Aritzia? Sheen? Oh my God, that Y2K fashion is in right now. Let me tell you, girl, I was rocking a mini skirt like that too when I was your age.
Oh, honey, those platform flip-flops, let me tell you about that.
Steve Madden. Are those Steve Madden?
Oh, that anklet, girl, of course. Had 1 million. Went all the way up to my thigh, bitch. Like, we're 13.
Leave us alone. Please don't talk to us. Oh my God.
And then the trigger too of like, when my mom's just like, yeah, when you're older, sometimes you get overlooked. And
you're like, how can I look 13?
Oh, I know. But then it also hit me like, oh my God, how often have I done that with an elderly person where I just kind of passed by, and especially when I was younger.
You're like, ew.
Oh my God.
It's fucking gross.
Oh man. So anywho, that was my triggering session.
On the opposite end, you were feeling insignificant. I have never felt so significant than when I was in Portland. I went to this. I
love this. Let's get this. I love that.
Okay, well, I didn't love it. But I walked into the Portland flea market, which is like this little craft fair situation, where people sell jewelry and shit. Jess, you would have thought I was the queen of fucking England. The first stand I go up to, got these earrings. I'm like, oh my God, I love these earrings. And she's like, we love you. Can we give them to you? And I was like, oh my God, yes. Okay, it wasn't just that. We chatted. They were great. Then I like walk 10 feet. This girl comes up and she's like, I know you like bandanas. I'd love to give you one of my bandanas. She's like, I follow you. I was like, oh, hello. And then I see these other girls. Literally, this all happens within like 5 minutes. I walk past, there's this other little group of girls like deciding whether or not to say something to me. It was a little overwhelming because I was like, guys, stop. Like, I'm not like, well, who do you think I am? Like J-Lo? Like, no, it's just me. But I was like by myself waiting for my other friend to show up. And then it gives you, this feeling, it does give you a wave of anxiety. We're like, holy fuck. For some reason, there's like just a lot of people here who want to say hi to me. And then Gray and I were talking about how like in LA, literally no one ever says anything to me ever. And then it's that weird anxiety of like,
no one says anything to anyone in LA.
No one says anything to anyone. You literally could be Angelina Jolie and people would be like, hey.
And be like, I think I've seen you before. Like, yeah, everyone's trying to then one up each other. There's like no compliments. You're just like,
oh my God, yeah, Brad and I used to work together. Like, sorry, what's going on? It'd be like that kind of thing. But
except me, I'm like, hello, I'm a huge fan. But I'm not going to go up to an A-list celebrity and say something because I feel like they're probably so overwhelmed. But if I see someone who's like, B to D, who I'm a fan of.
B to D to F.
B to D to F, like who I'm a fan of. Yeah. I definitely will go up and be like.
How much of a fan do you have to be?
For me to say something?
Yeah.
It kind of just depends what mood I'm in. Yeah. Sometimes even if I'm not that big of a fan, I'm like, oh my God, loved you and such and such.
Yeah.
I want to let this person know how I feel about them.
Yeah. Well, it got me a little anxious because then there's that thing that you and I have talked about before where you're like, oh my God, like if we're out to dinner and we're like arguing or something, it's happened to you.
Yes, then someone was a Chatty Broads fan as Evan and I were having an argument. And then I was in my head the entire time, like, well, how was I being?
I would assume though, if someone is legit a fan, like they're probably just like in their heads about like coming up to talk to you or something. Like they're probably not really noticing. That's what I'd like to tell myself.
Sure.
But especially with The Bachelor, it's weird too. I'm like, oh my God, all it would take is just like one heated conversation in a parking lot for someone to go on and be like, I saw the way they were talking to each other and they said blah, blah, blah.
Well, and I've told you before I was confronted once in person.
Oh Yeah, dude, that was crazy.
That was wild.
Real quick recap for people who don't know, just give the gist of it.
Oh, I've never shared this.
Oh, you didn't talk about this?
No, I don't think so. I was at DragCon.
I guess you had told me not on the podcast.
No, I told you because I was really shaken up about it. I had been at DragCon with Ember and having a great time. So there were a lot of broads there coming up saying hi, so sweet, had so many great conversations. And then I was just like in the bathroom with Ember and like someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and they were like, "Are you Jess Ambrose?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And this person like confronted me about something I had said on the podcast in a really intense manner.
Very aggressive way.
Very
and
aggressive.
Ember was there.
Ember was standing there holding my hand. And then when the person walked away, and this was like borderline finger in my face, like really intense. And Ember was standing there and Ember almost started crying because she was like, "Mommy, are you okay? Who was that?" Because Ember has she's like,
"No, it's a stranger who didn't like something you said and was going to give you a piece of their mind." Like,
it was really
what
intense.
The fuck?
Which never happens, by the way.
No,
like typically
never.
It's always like, any negative energy is always going to be online.
And I've heard huge people talk about it too and be like, "No, I've never had any negative interaction with anyone."
No, this was like a IRL confrontation and I was not expecting it.
Psycho, dude.
And I was like shaky for the rest of the day.
It's such
and
a
then
choice.
I was hiding from this person. I was like, because I every once in a while would see this individual around DragCon, and I was like,
it's such a fucked up move too, though, to see your like young child with someone, and not only that, but to know that you're enjoying the day with your kid, and then to be like, oh. I mean, that's so jarring for someone to like confront you like that, and not to mention like intensely criticize you about something related to your work. Like, imagine just choosing to say that to someone, like just choosing violence and saying that, and knowing that it's gonna be like rattle you, and also probably rattle your child for like the rest of your day when you're just trying to enjoy a fun little outing.
Oh yeah, Ember was very negatively affected by it.
Yeah.
And normally if like, again, this was the only time that had ever happened, anyone who ever comes up is always so lovely and also so kind to Ember and always is like, "Oh my God, hi Ember." She feels so good about it and feels seen. So then to have this was like, it was so interesting how it changed her perspective on my work because normally it was always like, "Mommy loves her work" podcast. And after that confrontation, if there would be something in the house that she could see on my face that I was stressed about. She'd be like, "Is it the podcast?"
Oh my God.
And she was like fully then tuned into that.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Anyway, so yeah.
But I would have taken that heat from those 13-year-old girls instead of being ignored. At least they would have cared.
That's what I'm saying. This person certainly cared about you enough to tell you something to your face and make it. I mean,
I love you
what a
too,
ballsy
baby.
move. What a ballsy move. But this is what I was going to say. How crazy is this? So yeah, that was funny. That was interesting. I was like, wow, I'm just being like gifted like a queen. Like, please give me more earrings and bandanas.
Yes.
Some of my favorite things. But Gray and I, so we went to like this, we didn't have like a wedding, but it was like sort of like an after party thing that we got invited to. They had like a really small ceremony, whatever. So I'm like dressed up for that. Then we go, they're like, the venue's closing, so you have to go to a event, like somewhere else after.
Sure.
So everyone's like, "Oh, let's go to this bar." I didn't want to walk to the bar. I was like a half mile away. I was in heels. So I was like, whatever, let's take an Uber. So we get there to the bar before everyone. It's this super divey place.
Okay, broads, quick pause. So having comfortable underwear is an essential part of any outfit, okay? Not just underwear, actually, but all of your base layers should be the best, softest, most comfortable part of any outfit. And there is one company that's really doing that right. You know who we're obsessed with. That's Meundies.
Meundies. They have the softest bralettes, undies, socks, loungewear, everything made from sustainable materials. I wear Meundies almost every single day. It's my go-to in my closet. They're so good for day-to-day wear. Gray loves his too. We have little matching sets. We have loungewear sets. The loungewear, by the way, I love for the winter and when the weather gets colder.
I have never put something so soft on my body before, let me tell you. If I could live in Meundies 24/7, I would. Oh wait, I can and I do, and it's bliss. Thank you, Meundies. Meundies bralette socks and undies are the greatest things you will ever wear, like silk clouds on your skin. I am serious. They're made from their signature micromodal fabric, which is sustainable, breathable, and super stretchy. Plus, everything on their site is available in, no joke, 1 million colors and patterns. So many fun patterns, and comes in sizes extra small through 4XL. And if you join their membership, which is totally free to join, by the way, you will get free shipping on every order and exclusive perks like a free new item every month, secret sales, and early access to some of the newest stuff that Meundies has to offer.
Also, Meundies makes a fabulous gift, and they have a great offer for our listeners too. So if you or someone you love needs Meundies, which you do, any first-time purchaser gets 20% off and free shipping and free returns. So to get 20% off your first order and free shipping and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to meundies.com/chatty. That's meundies.com/chatty.
So supporting your gut is really the first step in supporting the rest of your body. But how exactly do you support your gut to be the healthiest version possible? Scan any health food store or wellness influencer blog, and you'll see there are a whole lot of options available to you that will tell you that they are the product to gut healing. But let us tell you, not all gut products are created equal. So let us tell you about Seed and why we love Seed, and know you will too.
Big fan of Seed. It is the only probiotic supplement that I'm actually impressed by. Seed is made different from any other probiotic product out there. That's why you're actually going to see results. It's made with a capsule inside a capsule, so it protects the probiotic and prebiotics through digestion for delivery actually into the colon.
That's exactly why with Seed, you see the difference. All 24 strands of broad spectrum goodness make its way to where they need to go and aren't destroyed by your stomach acid on the way down. And once Seed has been delivered properly, it gets to work getting you all the amazing benefits of a healthy gut, like supporting your immune system, reduction in bloating, and so much more. I've been using Seed for quite some time now, and I've seen such amazing results. It's especially helped with some of my restroom issues. So thank you, Seed.
Get started on a new healthy habit today. Visit seed.com/chatty and use code chatty to redeem 20% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. That's seed.com/chatty and use code chatty to get 20% off your first month.
And then this dog ran into you at Stagecoach and said hi, and then randomly ran into me at this bar. Isn't that so weird? So then she's like, oh my God, I love Chatty Bras. She's like, I ran into Jess at Stagecoach. It was after like blah, blah, blah set. She was like, I was kind of drunk. And I was like, oh my God, I love you.
Oh my God,
whatever.
was it after Breland? Did you say
Yes!
Breland? Yeah,
This blonde girl.
She was so nice.
Yeah, she was really nice.
She was so nice.
She was really nice.
Well, I was at that Breland set because Evan, that's one of the artists Evan works with, so I was like kind of like standing off to the side watching him. And then her and one of her girlfriends came up, and she was so sweet, and then she kept apologizing. She was like, I'm a little drunk. I'm like, girl, so am I.
Well, she
baby.
brought it again. She was like, she brought it up again. She was like, I was drunk, but I was like,
that is so.
No, but I couldn't get over that. I was like, whoa, what? How weird that you were to randomly run into her at this like other like where is that, like
That's
Twin
so
or Five
random.
Palms or whatever the hell it's called? Where is
Coachella?
Yeah, it's the same place.
Yeah. Coachella
Anyway,
Valley.
What's the place by there? Something Palms,
Indio?
7 Palms.
2 Bunch Palms.
I don't know. But anyway,
Palm Desert Palm
I was
Springs,
like-
2 Bunch Palms. Indio Cathedral City.
Is there a place called Twin Palms?
I think so.
Is that what I'm thinking? Anyway, so she was like, I was like, what a trip that she ran into you there, like while you were,
it
on
was, like,
vacay
out,
at Stagecoach, and then she runs into me like in Oregon.
That is so random.
And she was like, I thought like, oh, what if I run into her in the city? But that would be weird. She's like, but then I saw your outfits because I was watching your story, and I like noticed you right away when you came in. Isn't that so weird?
That is so.
Small world.
The world is so small.
Oh, get this. So this is an interesting thing. The people who run the Cobb workshop, like his name's Allie and his wife Chloe, they live in Junction City, Oregon, whatever. I just went to go visit them again this past weekend and like work on some plastering stuff. But they both grew up on the street in Topanga where Gray's parents live now. Like his mom, he grew up across the street from Gray's parents' house. And like, I don't know how we got on the subject of Topanga, but they're like, wait, what street? And they're like, oh my God, like he literally grew up across the street from Gray's parents'
That
house.
is so bizarre.
And then like his wife's cousin, who's moving in with them soon, she's best friends with the girl that Gray used to date, like in Topanga. And I'm like, whoa.
You know what?
Weird, right?
I remember Jessica Stone talked about how like when you tune in, you'll start to realize like there's all this
Everything's
overlap.
connected.
Because I've noticed in the past few years, so frequently when I meet a new person, and not like a random person on the street that I'm like, hey, like
passing
whatever.
by. Like
But
when
like
you make
someone
a new
who
connection
a
with
new
someone.
connection, I'll find out that like, and I'm talking someone who used to live in like New York for however long or lived in Orange County. It was like, they always used to live in like the small little city that I live in now in Los Angeles. Oh my God, I live down the street. Mm-hmm. Like everyone. And I'm like,
Weird.
what? This isn't that big of a place. Like at some point in your life you lived here and this is someone who lived all over the place.
That's
it's
weird.
just so strange.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is this overlap about?
Well, if people didn't listen to the episode with Jessica Stone, she told a story about how this really actually tripped me out. I told Gray about it later and he was like, that is so weird. She was like, oh, did you used to climb at this one climbing gym in Orange County at Sender? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, like I saw you years ago and I had this feeling like I recognized you. And she's like, and then, you know, like I saw you on The Bachelor and like, and here we are now. But that was a trip
it's
to
so-
me.
it's such
'Cause
a
she didn't
trip.
know who I was, but then she like remembered my face enough, seeing me a stranger, to remember me. Then when she saw me on The Bachelor after, that's weird.
And then get this. So Jessica, I know of her because she's now, you know, good friends with some
Yeah.
of my good friends who still live in Orange County. But after she came on the podcast, I posted a photo of us on my Instagram, and Ember's best friend from school, her mom, when I saw her at pickup, was like, I've been like so close with Jessica for years.
Whoa.
And she's never lived in Orange. Like, and it's just, you're like, what? It's just so strange. Like the overlap. No, but that climbing gym situation was so random.
Yeah, that was just so weird to me that she remembered my face to recognize it years later. Strange.
Listen, there's some weird things going on in this universe.
Yes.
Weird connections.
Well-
Speaking of the universe,
Yeah.
the bros are going to have an episode coming up here with Jessica Lanyadoo soon.
I think that's coming out next
Tuesday?
week. Yeah, next Tuesday. Yeah,
So
next
in a week,
Tuesday.
so a week from today,
Yeah.
where Evan and Grayson are going to get their charts read,
Dude.
and I am tingling.
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait.
tingling. I just know.
I'm gonna make you send it to me early. Like I'm gonna, because
trust
I
and
have a
believe.
lot of driving time to do.
Oh no, you will receive the episode because I
have actually 10 hours of drive. Like anyway, I have a lot of driving to do. More 15 hours of
Woof.
driving to do. Anyway,
But I cannot wait because I know that Evan will just absolutely be like
he's gonna be a full believer.
floored. It's going to be so amazing.
Yeah, it's actually crazy to me how quickly Gray became a believer. Now he's like totally like, yeah, well, he's just so into it now.
Well, after their Thomas Dale episode, Thomas Dale was just like
oh, I know.
nailed everything, and now Evan's like
It was
a little mystic.
It was funny though. It was like a year ago when we were in Mexico when we started doing. I got a tarot deck.
Yes.
and it was the first time Gray had ever done tarot. He was like, I think he was like a full believer after that. He's like, well, I'm pulling cards that are like exactly like have to do with what's going on.
I love this.
I know. I love it too. You know, but it's that time we're moving out of I'm having a vision. No, we're moving out of a phase of, I don't know, we're moving into a new phase of the world. You know, it's like the past 100 years have been like post-industrial revolution and, postmodernism. And it's all very like kind of nihilistic and separating from religion and all of that. And I think that we're just moving into a new phase where people are going to get much more in tune with spirit because they'll have to survive. That's a little dark. But anyway, on another note,
Yes.
I thought today that we would go through, by the way, how much did you love the conversation with John Kim and his lady?
Vanessa,
yes.
Wasn't
that great?
Absolutely loved. They're both so incredible. I so appreciate how vulnerable both of them are with their relationship.
Really stuck with me.
Me too. I there were numerous moments in that episode. If you haven't listened, that was last Tuesday's episode. There were so many moments where instead of like sugarcoating something, they like actively had the conversation with each other, with us in the room.
I really felt like the biggest thing that stuck with me was just like, oh yeah, like these are two therapists who like don't have it all figured out in their own relationship.
That was really powerful.
I was like, yeah, I feel that.
It gives you a lot of hope and just be like, to be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And just a lot of valuable, serious nuggets that I took away from that.
Definitely. And I think it also speaks to, I've really been thinking about, I don't know, there's just different phases in relationships. And I feel like I was just realizing like Gray and I are reaching another point. I don't know if you can identify with this in your relationship, but I feel like there are points where you go through hard things and you go like, you have this feeling of like, yeah, we made it through that. And you're like, yeah.
And you're like so triumphant together.
Yeah,
and then you're like so bonded.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, I'm in love with you because we just did that. Like we made it on the other side.
You stare into each other's eyes and cry.
Yeah. You're just like, wow. Like, yeah, you made it through the fire, you know? And then it's just funny because then you just go into rough patches again and then you just kind of like forget about that feeling and you're like,
totally.
You're like, oh my God.
Or you just kind of get complacent in life.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of.
Yeah, there's just nothing.
Aren't like there as like in tuned with how in love you are.
Yeah.
It's those moments where I really connect in the way of like when I let all the like outside anxieties and stressors like infiltrate my brain for a long time. And then one day, typically through something shitty, I have that realization where it's like all that matters is like Evan and Ember. And I have them and I'm so grateful for that. And like at the end of the day, like that's where I want to lay my head.
Matters, yeah.
And then I have that like hard for a week where I'm like, who the fuck cares? Like I got you too.
Yeah.
And then one thing happens and I'm fully in the spiral again.
Yeah.
The hamster wheel of life.
Do you identify though with that like peak and you're like, wow. It's funny though because I feel like we're hitting it and then I can look back at like a couple. We haven't had as long of a relationship, so I can look back at like maybe like 2 other peaks, you know? It's kind of crazy. They don't come like that often.
Yeah, I would say I totally relate to that. I would say maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
There's like some like, and when I say big argument, it could even just be like us having 2 very different feelings about like, you know, how we want to be living life or whatever. And then you grind for like a month or something with each other. You have a rough go for like 6 weeks or whatever it is. It could be months. And then you have that triumphant peak because you made your way through it. Yeah, maybe once or twice a year.
Damn drama.
Oh, yeah. I am the drama.
The drama is me.
But like, oh no, I like for sure once or twice a year where it'll be like a rough month.
Yeah.
Because we're just on 2 different spaces. It could be like he's working nonstop and I'm feeling overworked because I'm doing it alone here. And then I don't feel connected because his mind is elsewhere. And then we're like trying to, even if there's nothing inherently wrong, where you're just not connecting with each other.
Really frustrating.
And you can't quite put your finger on what it is, but you're just like, I'm just like not connecting with you right now.
We're missing, we're slipping. Yeah. Maybe I'm talking more about bigger ones because I think this is like probably the second like peak. But I guess maybe people just have different like patterns because this is like, I could say like the second like peak I felt in our relationship. But that might be like, you know, there might be like little hikes you take and then there might be like the 20-mile backpacking trip, you know? Like maybe you went through that with like career shifts, you know, or like baby, where it's like the Mount Kilimanjaro
Yeah.
kind of thing, where
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit, like we made it out of that. The odds were actually against us in this
And we
phase,
did it. And we did. Okay.
and we did it.
No, I follow that. I follow that. Yeah, then maybe once or twice a year.
Crisis,
But I do feel that though after honestly
sure.
any disagreement.
Well,
I'm soaring for a while after we figure it out. I'm like, oh my God, look at us go. We did it.
Well, that's
we
what
love each other.
I think I said this on our last episode, but that's like kind of what our couples counselor talks about, where it's like, it's actually it's not about avoiding the conflict. It's not about, because I think like, and other couples counselors have sort of said that of like, you know, how can we make sure that the fight doesn't get to this point, right? Or whatever. But our counselor's sort of like, okay, so what really matters is when the fight is at that point, how can you find tools to reconnect when you're both like in emotional shutdown, when you're both saying shit you don't mean? Like, how can you connect in that moment? Because if you can connect in that moment, it's going to be like a healing balm. It's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what you're describing, is like when you connect with him, like after a conflict, then you're like, then you hit that high, you know, where you're like, oh, I connected with you. And that meant the most to connect with you in that moment, because it was at a time when we were so disconnected. Yeah?
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yes. Not so much like the career shift.
No, but I think what you're touching on is like, yeah, something that I'm learning about. It's like, how can you create like healing and space for connection when you're going through like those difficult times? Because that is when it's going to matter the most. That's when it's kind of make it or break it in the semblance of those moments. But
So you're gonna peak right now?
I think so.
You're soaring. She's soaring.
Well, I don't know about that. It's more like it's not, I'm not quite there, but it's more like the feeling of hope, which to me is like the biggest soaring, where you're like, oh, like, you know, there's hope that like maybe we won't have to go through this kind of conflict for like at least like the next few years, you know, like maybe we can, I have hope that we're gaining new tools to make our relationship better, like in the long run. I think that's kind of the high, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're figuring it out, like unlocking things.
Also, I mean, just the partnership in that too.
I also think that like hearing about talking more about stuff with friends, hearing from them, even doing this Q&A box on my stories, which we're going to get into, about like hearing about the nitty gritty about other people's difficulties in their relationships is really validating, because you're like, oh my, I mean, sometimes I just think you feel like, oh wow, like we just don't have, like, maybe we just like don't have what you're supposed to have to make something work. I don't know. So I just feel like hearing from people is very clarifying, because there are certainly some relationships that are not, where you're like John and Vanessa were talking about it. Like there's some where they're like, there's some clients where it's like, why are you?
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, one person's not willing, or it's just like you've fought the good fight, and it's time to move. There's a new shift coming in your life.
Right. No, I totally agree though, on like when you hear about the weeds of other people's relationships, which is one of the things that I love about their book, is like they're sharing some of their rough experiences, sometimes more than even like teaching, educating. It's like, this is what we experienced. Because I don't know, I feel like when other people share about their relationship hardships, it's so scary and vulnerable to do that, because you know there will always be people criticizing you and making you feel small and bad about your relationship. But I know for myself,
or like bad about your partner.
Yeah, exactly, which is a whole thing. But it helps you feel so much less alone, and helps like it helps me feel so much less alone and helps me process so many different ways and like perspectives and angles too. Because again, I mean, we always talk about this on the podcast, right? The only thing I really know is where I'm coming from. Like, I'm the only one who knows every experience I've had, right? So even if I've been with my partner for 50 years, I don't fully know what's going on in his exact process.
Yeah, and he might not even know.
So it's so nice. Exactly. So it's so nice to hear other people, because I feel like then it really helps give insight to what might potentially be more like my partner's process that maybe I'm missing or not quite understanding. Or yeah.
Do you feel like, did you come away with any strong feelings like post divorce in your family? Like, did you know how some people are like, I'll never do that, or like,
never divorce?
Yeah, or like, I'll never, or some people I guess don't even want to like fall in love, like, because like, did you have any like big takeaways?
That's a really good question. I would say in the immediate moment, my big takeaway was like, don't show your cards, bitch. Close off your cold heart.
Oh, damn.
I like shut down big time
Really?
relationally. Evan and I had just gotten back together right when after our like big breakup.
You're like, trust no one.
It was literally like him and I had been broken up for 1.5 years, 2 years. We just gotten back together, and then that happened with my parents, and I shut off my heart for like a year.
Whoa.
And we kept dating.
Yeah.
Poor guy, ice queen.
Yeah.
But I was then really like, I was like there with him and processing through stuff, and like we were in like a committed relationship, but I was not open at all. I was kind of like, whatever. Because I'm like, you can't trust anybody. This will never work in the end. So I had to process through that a lot. But I think as a grown ass person, my biggest takeaway from watching a divorce, and this is going to be literally the darkest, saddest thing to say ever, but I think because of the Christian culture, being surrounded by that and being like, divorce is the definition of failure, I realized that divorce is not the definition of failure. The definition of, and the word failure is not the right word to use, but that's not being true to yourself and the boundaries that you need to set. That's what I'm failing in a relationship. Because my thing was, it's just like, you know, being taught like the worst thing that can happen in your relationship is divorce. And I remember looking around at some of my friends' families and being like, they don't even like each other. Like, they hate being together.
Yeah.
And this isn't what a relationship's supposed to be about. This is not what a partnership's supposed to be about. So after I went through my ice queen phase, it actually really, like, sure, there was trauma there because of certain dishonesties and stuff, but like, it actually really helped me feel freedom in a relationship that I needed to feel. Because I'm like, what I want in a relationship is not to feel forced into a relationship that I can't get out. I need to know that I'm choosing that person every day. And it's going to be really hard, and it's not easy, and it's going to have days that really suck. But like, I'm choosing to be with that person. I don't get married and then I'm not stuck. And I needed to have that freedom in my own space for sure.
One of my good friends, she is on her, well, they're not married, but I guess technically she's on her 4th serious partnership. She got married in her early 20s, then got married, it's my friend Veronica. She got married in her early 20s when she got pregnant with twins on an IUD, mind you. Then, so don't fucking shame people when they get pregnant, okay? Because you don't fucking know their story. So she got married, then they got divorced, and she got married again and had another kid about 9 years later, and then years later split again because she met, no, actually in between there somewhere, she was married to a woman, which she says was the worst divorce, and they never speak to each other after that. She said that was the messiest breakup out of any she's ever been in, and they do not speak. But that was somewhere in there. And then she split with that partner because she met Andy, who is Gray's best friend, who we went on the surf trip with and everything. And then now they have a child together. She's still technically married to her last husband, who she had her now like 12-year-old daughter with. They haven't actually legally gotten divorced yet. But like her last ex, like he'll go, like when Andy travels or stuff, like he'll go stay at the house. He'll stay at the house with them for like a couple months. He lives in Mexico. He'll come visit for like a couple months, and we'll stay at them with his girlfriend. Her first ex, you know, he'll do the same, come and, you know, pick up the twins and stay at their house. Wow. And they'll go visit each other. And she said, I love her line. She said, I've had divorce, but I've never had a broken home. And that's her line. And I fucking love that, because she's like, yeah, I mean, we split up, you know, we're no longer married, but like that doesn't mean that there's not like love, some sort of like love that was able to come between us. She's like, a lot of fucking work. She's like, there was definitely like a lot of strife and a lot of brokenness and a lot of anger, you know, typical divorce shit that had to be worked through over the course of years. But she's like, but now, you know, like, you know, there's no broken home here. We're in each other's lives, and that has always given me a lot of peace. I really liked that.
I think that divorce is something that, like, I don't know. I don't think that there are enough resources for divorce.
I think there's a lot of resources for these kind of transitions.
Like
divorce,
it's so wild
abortion,
to me. It's like
death,
more than
birth.
50% of people end up in divorce.
Yeah.
And seeing some of my friends go through like the traumas of certain divorces and the legal pieces and all that. And yeah, I'm like, man, there's like no resources. You're right though. These transitions, there's really not a lot of resources, and they're some of the most important
and we
factors
also
in your
don't know how to
entire life.
handle them, you know, like for some reason, like this, a similar conversation with abortion sort of came to mind, where it's like, we don't know how to do the in between, where we don't know how to either be like, that's like with divorce, it's like, it's either so sad or horrible, or it's like, we're supposed to have a fucking cake and be like, woo. And it's like, right. Where are we taught like how to just like hold space for someone going through a transition that may have like a lot of mixed, complicated feelings? Yeah. I don't know. We just
I've been
don't know how
having
to do
to
that in
sit
general.
with that a lot recently, because I've had numerous friends right now who are going through divorces, and I'm like having to really check myself, because I'm realizing I'm like, oh, I need to learn how to hold space for my friends in the way that is best for them.
Yeah, that's hard,
because I want to be able to be there for them in what way is going to make them feel most like seen and empowered.
Yeah.
In this.
And supported, yeah.
Yeah, and loved, and
yeah,
all of that. But yeah, for me with my family, my parents' divorce, like it was so hard on both of them, particularly my mother. But ultimately, it really did allow me, because in the church that I was raised in, it was like the only reason that you have grounds for divorce is if your spouse cheats on you. And so it was always like, when you looked at beginning a lifelong partnership, it was like, that's the only time that you can leave that's considered appropriate. Mm-hmm. And I remember just feeling like, this isn't right. Uh-huh. Like, I know so many people who are trapped in marriages and miserable, and because of that, their children are are feeling the effects of that. Yeah. And I don't know, I just felt like I felt through the pain of the family's divorce. I just felt ultimately grateful for seeing what was important to me, which is being able to choose a partner, the ability to choose a partner every day and work through the tough stuff, but not do it as an obligation, do it as a choice. And
Yeah.
then being able to then see like my mom and dad too get to a point where like, you know, my mom and my stepmom are like totally good. Like we can all hang out together as a family and like it's totally fine and everyone's good with each other. And as painful, horribly painful as the divorce was on my parents, they're both so much better now. And they're both in positions where like they're in their 60s and are able to like grow, which is making them feel alive because they're feeling themselves like actively changing their minds and like learning new things instead of kind of being stuck like they were for a long time.
Yeah, I was thinking about how on the flip side, like one, people don't feel the permission to like set themselves free of something that's ultimately destructive for their life and others. But then also on the flip side, like when we don't have a safe container to share about like what's going on in our relationships, honestly, like without feeling fear of judgment, I think it also doesn't give other people perspective. And so like, you know, I'm sure so many people can't count the number of times where they're like, we just don't have a relationship like them or like that, or like there is something seriously wrong here. Like we can't do this, you know. It's like I don't think a lot of people, I'm realizing how little perspective I've had on the real struggles that people go through in their relationship. You know, people say like, oh, marriage is hard, and I know we've talked about this before on the podcast, but I'm just really gaining more of a sense, especially even when I put up this box like, oh, what do you struggle most with in your relationship? It's like most couples have like real hard struggles that take active work and like a lot of tears and a lot of like, and there are some people that are just copacetic like 24/7. I personally think that has to do with like personality, and some people are just like really, really chill.
Sure.
And they're with a partner who's really, really chill, and you know, life might be really, really chill for them and they can navigate that fairly easily. But for the majority of people, there's a lot of messy ins and outs and phases that are really hard to navigate. And I think the more that you start hearing about what other people go through, the more validating it is to be like, oh my God. Or even people that are on the, you know, really for the first time, it didn't make sense for my parents when I was younger to like talk about the stuff they've struggled with. Like one, as a child, it just wouldn't be appropriate. Like that would have made me feel like fearful, I think, of like, you know, and insecure about their relationship. But now as an adult, me going through things and calling them and be like, you know, and them being like, oh, I remember that feeling. And like, oh, I still struggle with that sometimes. And like, oh yeah, we just had an argument last week where blah, 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 blah. And being like,
oh my God, they've been together still for this long and they're still having arguments like that.
Still really dumb shit of being like, you know, a family member recently was like, yeah, he didn't want me. He thought it was stupid that I was renting a car to like drive here to do this thing, you know, in the other city. And so then he just like didn't want to go because I was renting the car and he thought it was stupid. And then I went anyway. And then he was pissed and called me and, you know,
and you're like, oh, and you guys are having active arguments still.
And you've been married like 40 years. Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome to being in a relationship with another human being.
We're all just the same people, just in bodies that are withering.
That's Jesus, Jess, how sad.
No, but I'm just saying, right? It's like all those 13-year-old girls who ignored me because I'm getting old. But it's literally like we're all just people and our bodies age, right?
Yes.
But we're all just like, it's the same shit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
There was a moment, you know, I told you about the documentary In and of Itself, which I watched for the first time, which... I'm going to say this casually, changed my life.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do any spoilers because I would never allow it. But there was a moment.
What's this documentary about?
It's impossible to explain.
I know, you didn't, yeah.
It's literally impossible to explain. And every
okay.
person I've heard who's seen it, because it came out like a year ago, and I've heard other people talk about it on different podcasts, and everybody was always like, oh my God. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and like 99% audience score. It's like, this will change your life.
Okay.
But then anytime someone goes, well, what's it about? It's like, I don't know how to explain this to you.
I don't know where to begin with this.
I really don't. It's a guy who's like technically like a magician slash card mentalist, whatever, who basically does like a long form, almost lyrical poem on stage, and it's filmed. He did like 600 performances, and it's a live filming of one of his performances, or a few of them put together.
Okay.
And it's I'm not spoiling anything because this happens in the first like 30 seconds, but all the audience members at the very beginning of the documentary or the show or whatever, before they sit down, there's a wall of cards, and all of them say "I am" and a word underneath it. And before they all sit down and the show begins, they have to take one. And they're words like, "I am independent. I am a mechanic. I am an introvert. I am a positive being." Like all different things, right? And some people take ones that they think represents themselves. Some people take ones for fun.
It's like, I'm a mechanic, ha ha ha, right?
Right. And then the show begins, and that comes up later. And it is all about who you are, how people see you versus who you actually are.
Ooh.
Tears, it'll, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I will definitely watch.
But there was a moment talking about how you're just a person. There's a moment in it, and like I said, I'm not going to ruin anything, but where one of the cards said, "I am an absolute catch." And the person who believed it about themselves is a probably 85-year-old woman. She's this cute little 85-year-old woman, and she's like, "I'm an absolute catch." And I was like, and that's her. Mm-hmm. That's her life. Mm-hmm. She was an absolute catch. This woman experienced life and all of her partner, everyone chasing after her, and like
that was her experience.
That's
like,
her.
That's her experience. Yeah. Right.
And it's the same thing I feel like in marriages and partnerships, where you're like, oh, just because we're getting older doesn't mean that like that necessarily that perspective changes. Like, no, we have the same arguments about the same stuff. It's all the same.
Forever.
Which is exciting because it gives us opportunity to do it better and over and try it again and practice. It's not just like you have just those arguments when you're young and then they're done for forever. It's like, no, I can actually like try to learn how to be a better partner to my partner and be better to myself. And okay, broads, one more quick pause. So fall and winter are on their way, which means it's just about time to transition your homes into their coziest, comfiest states, perfect for afternoons of lounging around, movie nights, and a whole lot of relaxing Sundays. So whether you're going to redo your entire space or just add a few of those small, special finishing touches, Jenny Kane has everything you need to get your room ready to transition into the next season, in stock and ready to ship right away, so you can have the space of your dreams ready to go before you know it.
Oh, Jenny Kane is everything they have is gorgeous. No one does statement pieces better than Jenny Kane. Each of their furniture pieces, they're all inspired by the clean, airy California coast. They'll instantly become the talking point of any room, and the quality is unmatched. Because, look, all of these pieces, they're made from premium natural materials like suntanned leather, natural cedar and oak wood, and beautiful linens. Also, it's just all timeless, and it goes with virtually any aesthetic. If you're looking to revamp a room in your house, a furniture piece from Jenny Kane will do the trick.
And also, you can still get a major cozy vibe upgrade with just some small additions too. And Jenny Kane is also perfect for those pieces. The decor and accessory section on that site is my go-to when I want to refresh any space in my home. The hand-poured candles literally give me a life and also make amazing gifts. Just something to note with the holidays coming up.
Get 20% off all furniture and decor, free shipping on furniture, early product access, and much more with a JKH membership. Join at jennykane.com/membership or go to jennykane.com/home. You're going to create the space you'll never want to leave. That's JENNIKAYNE.com/home.
Okay, so I know it's a cliche and some of you might roll your eyes when I say this, but it's true, okay? You really do learn something new every day. And the new thing I learned today is that when it comes to sheets, you always hear thread count, right? Well, did you know that it's not the quantity of the thread count that really matters? It's the quality of the thread count. That's right. It doesn't matter how many threads your sheets have. If they're not the best threads, they aren't going to be comfortable, which is why we're recommending Boll and Branch to the Broad Squad. They may just be the world's comfiest sheets.
Boll and Branch use the best, highest quality threads on earth, which gives them a superior softness, and they actually get better and softer with every single wash, which is how sheets should be. As soon as you take your Boll and Branch sheets out of the package, you can feel the difference from other sheets.
And let me say this again. They actually get better and softer with every single wash. I didn't know this was possible for sheets, okay? I'd heard this about Boll and Branch sheets, but I didn't know if I necessarily bought it. Well, let me confirm for you. I have now been sleeping on my Boll and Branch sheets, and I have washed them, and they do indeed get better and softer with every single wash. It is incredible. They are so buttery soft. It turns every bed into a luxury sleeping experience. No wonder, by the way, that these sheets have 10,000 five-star reviews. But let me tell you, when I started sleeping in my Boll and Branch sheets, when I slept in them, I couldn't believe it. It was like I was being held by angels, okay? Cocooned in absolute butter. Also, all Boll and Branch sheets are 100% free from toxins, which means there are 0 pesticides, formaldehyde, or other harsh chemicals, so you can sleep easy knowing you've got the best on your bed with Boll and Branch. And you can get 15% off your first set of sheets when you use promo code chatty at bollandbranch.com. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLANDBRANCH.com, promo code chatty. Bollandbranch.com, promo code chatty.
Well, you're also getting like new insight when you're faced with like that conflict and that difficulty. Like you're always getting new insight into yourself about that, right? So like when you're the whole thing with those girls that you encountered at the pool, right? Like that actually brought to the surface, as so often our partnerships and relationships do, that brought to the surface, you're like, damn, I'm still like healing from being like a freaking insecure 13-year-old.
Like, yeah.
Of like
Still
feeling
in the
unseen, like,
process.
whoa, that still is very much present in me. And like, wow, that's something to be aware of and maybe something to spend some time on, you know, or like whatever. I think that happens all the time in relationships if you let it, being like, oh my gosh, you know, like, I panicked when he started like walking out of the room and didn't want him to leave. Like, what part of me feels like, you know, like radically insecure about someone like walking away, and why does that like trigger things in me? Sometimes you don't get answers too. You're like, I don't know. My parents didn't do that to me. Like, I don't freaking know why I do that. And that's kind of the annoying thing about therapy sometimes is you're like, oh, well, I don't have any like textbook first 10 years of my life reason for that, but it's
for sure.
Here.
I had a probably about a month ago, like a really intense, like Evan and I were arguing about something, and a lot of times when I'm really overwhelmed in an argument, I have a hard time gathering my thoughts. So I want to walk away for a little while to like calm my brain down, because I have a hard time knowing then how to communicate. And I feel like I'm not getting across exactly what I'm intending to. And so I'll walk away. But a lot of times Evan will like follow me. And we've gotten in arguments before because I go, hey, like you need to respect me when I say that I need a break. Like I need to walk away and gather my thoughts. You need to respect my words and not follow me when I tell you to
But then he's feeling anxious, like I want to make things right.
Well, we've had this breakthrough all of a sudden, and I'm not going to share specifically what it is because that's his childhood story, but he literally realized then in therapy, and we were both bawling because he had this breakthrough in therapy where he goes, when you walk away, even though I know you're just walking to the next room, because of something in my childhood, I'm scared you're never going to walk back in again.
Yeah.
And it was a very like intense experience for him.
Yeah.
So he's like, when you walk away, there's this fear in me that like, I'm not worth you ever walking back in the door again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Now we can have a different type of conversation.
Which also, that's like such a good example of like when he can pause, when any person can pause and like figure out like what they're feeling, but and then like, and you don't even have to like say, oh, it's because of this like childhood thing, right? Like if he was just to like if he was just to be able to identify like, I'm afraid you're never gonna walk back in, and just like say that in the moment, then like immediately him opening his like heart up in that way to you, then you can immediately receive it, right?
I immediately, like the second he said that, like we were in an argument and he said that, and it like hit me like an arrow in the heart.
Yeah.
And I was like,
oh yeah,
I never would have even thought that was going on. So it's like now when we're having a disagreement and I feel like I need to step away, I can like grab his hand and be like, I just want to let you know I'm coming back in.
Right.
And I value you and I treasure you and love you so much. But because of that, I want to take a moment to think about my words before I say them, but I'm coming back in.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And even if like you weren't to do that, it's like he now has the tool though too to be able to like go after you, you know, and be like, I'm feeling really insecure and I'm feeling really scared like about our connection, you know, like say, and then you're like, oh, okay. The bros were just talking about it recently on their show about like, you know, getting really defensive, you know, if like there's some sort of, which I think pretty much everyone does, feeling really defensive when you're criticized and be like, but I'm doing all this for you, you know, like, but instead of like approaching that, you know, when someone like brings up a critique or something, instead of being like, but I did this and this and this, like, I feel like pausing and like being able to be like, I'm really like feeling scared that like I'm not enough for you and like I want so badly to be enough for you because I care so much about you. Then it's like, oh. And the other person is immediately like, oh, what? Like you're immediately like, you know, softened. Or sometimes it's not that immediate, but it's the start to like because being able to see each other.
Most of the time, the other person is also having all their own insecurities as well. Like, we're both sitting in our childhood trauma, or both sitting in all of our insecurities, and we're both having to battle those as we have this disagreement. So I think sometimes when one person, it was like what John and Vanessa were talking about, how John was like ownership. It's like when one person puts that card on the table, it allows for the next person to do it. It's also almost to like, what's the word? Paying it forward a little bit. It's like one person does it and the person behind you does it and the person behind you. There's that really amazing kid
Until someone
book.
Breaks the chain.
Yeah, until one of you bitches breaks the chain.
Doesn't pay for
until
the
I'm like, I'm in Starbucks and I'm like, the order behind me is how much? Did
you hear the story someone shared recently? They were like, oh, when someone does a chain like that at Starbucks, I'm like, cool. Like, are they paid for yours? You're like, oh, cool. That's so nice.
Thank you so much. And then you
keep going.
That's so funny.
Anyway.
But no, there's like that really sweet children's book. God, what is it called? Something about kindness. And it's literally just like, and it like just visually shows when one person showed an act of kindness to another person, it causes a ripple effect. And then all of a sudden this person, and it's so simple. I feel like that's that way in a relationship too, right? You show your card, you say, hey, I'm feeling really insecure.
How do you handle it when you get hurt in that moment? We were just talking about off the podcast recently of like, I remember that really dramatic thing where I was talking about like being kind to this person and how I got this internet person and how it just completely like backfired, and I felt like that vulnerability. That was wild. That's a very extreme example, but it was like I got actually like from that specific situation like a lot of trust issues where I was like, damn, like there was multiple layers of it. Like I was vulnerable enough to be kind to this person. Oh, there's like so many layers to that whole situation where like literally I had done all these things and the intent behind every single thing was like, oh, I don't want someone to feel alone. Like I want them to feel like they have a friend who like gets what they're going through. And I feel like I just got fucking bitch slapped across the face. And I was talking about that in therapy and I was like crying, being like, you know, that really shook me up because I felt like there are people out there who will 100% take advantage of your like your vulnerability.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and will use it to completely like twist a knife in
Absolutely.
you. And that really scared me because I was like, oh my gosh, like that just happens sometimes. Like there are people that just do that. Like, and I'm not usually someone who like struggles with trust issues in that way. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was really scary. Granted, that's different in a relationship, but like, how do you handle that feeling of like, because I feel like, you know, I feel like both you and I can be pretty good about like in certain situations, like opening up to people and like really being like vulnerable with like what we're going through.
Are you referring to a relationship? Like a romantic relationship, or
no? I don't think I'm referring to a romantic relationship, particularly because I don't feel like I have a lot of experience with that. Well, actually, that's not true though. That's not true though. I feel like there are small instances in our relationship, you know, where I will even go like, I just am feeling this, and I'm really opening my heart up, and then I'm met with like a, well, da-da-da-da-da, you know how that can be in an argument where it's like, you're like, wait, but I just did the thing where I'm like showing my heart to you, and you're being like, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, like how do you handle that?
Not great.
That's something I've really grappled with in our therapy, you know, because he's like, just like show yourself, and I'm like, oh my God, but what about when I'm like showing myself and that person's like, hurt. And then you're like, woohoo.
Really good question. I think for myself personally, a lot of my work has been learning to not show that to as many people as I want to.
In general, yes.
I panic and do that a lot with people. I think it's kind of a trauma response of just like, but look at this here. Like this is like, I'm going to be fully vulnerable with you about how I feel. I think for a really long time, I kind of lived by that, like, if I say it first, they can't hurt me with it type energy.
Did we talk about this on the podcast or personally when we were talking? I think maybe it was on the podcast where we were saying like it's a defense mechanism too, to be like, I don't want to be uncomfortable like in this silence or in this lack of connection with you for whatever reason.
1,000%.
To just be like,
I can't sit in this quiet conversation. I have to be like
awkward conversation. Like
oh no, the amount of times that I don't know someone and I'm standing like in an elevator with them and I'm like, oh man, wow, I really fucked up and I just got the like, and just like share something really personal and I'm like, oh my God, like why did I just do that?
I do that too when I'm in a really chaotic sort of manic mode for whatever reason. It might just be that person's energy. Why did I just say that? And sometimes it's an exaggeration too to try to connect with someone. It's like your friend opening up about divorce and you're like, how many times have I told Evan like pack up your shit and fucking leave, you know? Saying that and to like connect.
Nothing has resonated more with me.
I do it
so much. And it's not like oh, I'm lying. It's literally like I'm trying to make that person comfortable. Right. So then I'll share something, but I'll share it in a way that might be like not accurate to like who I am in that moment. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like for instance, let's just say like my mental health's doing a lot better. Let's just say, which, you know, it's been a rough journey the past year and a half, but like in my interim when I was doing really well, if I'd see someone, I would then all of a sudden divulge something I did when I was manic. I'd be like, oh, I'm so this way. I do this type of shit all the time. And I'll sit with myself and afterwards I'd be like, no, that's not me right now. Yeah. Like I've really journeyed through that and I've really like worked on myself in certain ways. Obviously, again, we're talking about mental health. It's sometimes a little bit different, but like, oh, I've done the therapy. I've done a lot of the work to try to alleviate some of that. And I just told this person that I always do this and it's been years. Like that's not who I am. And now that person has this thing. And I now just kind of put that on as a jacket. Yeah. And then you kind of take that on and I'm like, is that who I like? And then you start to kind of own it.
This is an exaggerated example, but you can do this thing too, where it's like if someone goes like if I was to say like, I suck at fashion. I never know how to dress. It's like you might do the thing where you'd be like, well, you did used to be a stylist, but like half the time I just throw something on and walk out of the house. And it's like, bitch, you're a fashionista.
But instead of just sitting in and being like, oh, really? Like, why do you think that?
Right.
That's that reflectorship big time too.
I was just about to say, but the actually like the flip side of it is that then people do feel connected, you know?
Yes. Which I love.
But it's got to come from a place of honesty.
It has to come from a place of non-anxiety. It needs to come from a place of peace within me.
Because I would say honesty means like then dishonesty.
Yes.
That's not right.
My boundaries is my big issue, right? Ooh, baby. Boundaries.
But what did you just say? And I just talked over you. You said it has to come from a place of non-anxiety.
Yeah,
like
non-anxiety
peace,
and peace. And so for me, like when I'm living in an anxious, unpeaceful space, my boundaries drop. That's just my tendency. And I just have none. And I don't know why that is. I think maybe it's almost like I drop my boundaries because I'm in a place of anxiety that I almost want to be seen because I'm hurting.
You're like, look, girls at the pool, like,
look at me. I'm not doing well. Please validate my existence. You know what I mean? Versus when I'm in a place where I'm being honest with myself, I'm giving myself self-love and time better than with my boundaries. And then all of a sudden, I'm able to, I think, be better than at standing in that stillness and just holding space for someone instead of being like, don't worry, me too times 10, which can also be so obnoxious. And so I think that's so then going back to your initial question of like, how do I then, if I'm vulnerable and then it's not seen, I don't know quite how to answer that because I'm like actively in a process of like trying to figure out how to balance that because I'm learning that I'm too vulnerable with too many individuals. And so I've been trying to get better at boundaries and learning to be like, I can be a kind human being without fully opening up every portal of myself to someone.
Yeah.
And learning how to protect myself. And that some people just don't, that's not for them. That's for me. But then at the same time, what's then on the flip side, the concept of then when I do decide to be vulnerable, let's just say with Evan, like he's someone that I love, and I feel like a little hurt by something or by like a friend and I feel hurt, I don't have a great reaction. I get like really, really defensive because I think I'm trying to figure out how to.
I don't really know how to handle that.
I don't know how to manage that.
I don't know either, especially because, and by the way, you just brought up something. I want to circle back around because you were just saying the thing of like, I was just thinking about, had multiple thoughts. I just had the thought of like some of the people in my life who I enjoy sharing the most with are people who just have genuine curiosity. Like Gray's friend Alec, it's like when you talk to him, he always will like ask such an interesting follow-up question where like at the end of the conversation, I'm like, oh my God, like I just felt like Alec like really noticed me.
You do that.
Well, thank you. I was just like, wow, I just really feel like he paid attention enough to ask a question that made me think even like, oh, that meant so much to me. Even though I didn't know anything about him, and I thought about this conversation that you and I were having last week about parenting, and we were just talking about how hard it is to not just, we had a whole conversation. But I was just thinking of like, I think that like kids and most people, we just want to feel like someone's actually engaging with us.
Yes.
And I actually think what you do is such a good way to engage. But what you're talking about too is if you're in an anxious state, you're certainly engaging, but it's at the expense of your own safety.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
So like, I was just thinking about how.
And I'm also kind of making it about me too.
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line because it's like I'm trying to make that person feel seen.
Yeah.
But in my anxiety, I'll then talk about my experience, which I think sometimes is great.
Yeah, I mean,
because then you're, that person is feeling recognized.
That's how we first connected.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But at the same time, there is, like you said, like that what you just said about Alec, and like I said, I think you're really great at doing this too. When you're just then asking, like, when you're taking a pause and then like asking like genuine questions or engaging in a genuine way, that person still is feeling really seen. Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to be like, here's all my trauma.
Yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can still be there for someone and hold a boundary in a good way.
Yeah. My friend Veronica, it's like, as we've gotten closer over the years, like she shares a lot more about her experience. But like in the beginning of our relationship, I felt very close to her and I didn't really like know much about like her own feelings or experience of her relationship or like whatever. But yet I still felt like I loved being around her because I felt like she was curious about me and wanted to know more and was listening, like all that sort of thing. But I was just thinking about how kids and all humans, I think, want that too. It's just like that curiosity of like, oh, you like care about what I'm showing you or what I'm talking about. You don't need to like,
Well, and I keep going back to one of the things that Jessica Stone had said specifically to me, like in the conversation, but I think it just holds true for so many of us, is that she was like, you need to sometimes just stop and pause and know like, it's okay if you seem odd in this conversation if you're sitting there in silence. And to just take a beat. And in that pause, maybe you can allow yourself to recognize, am I holding the boundary I need to hold? Am I about to have an anxious response? Okay, I'll ask a genuine question instead. Or like, am I in a space right now of filled with like peace and I have my proper boundaries and I'm going to share this still?
I mean, I struggle with that a lot too in a very similar way actually, in the anxious thing, because like with Casa, I have to be really careful that I'm not making promises I can't keep, which is like that can encapsulate a lot of things that I have to be really careful about how I phrase things. Even like, got to make sure you're not setting to an expectation about how often you're going to call or whatever, or that, like in terms of the child. But then you also have to be really careful about not divulging information to people you're not supposed to be divulging information to. So like virtually the only person I'm supposed to be relaying info about other conversations with is like the caseworker and like my supervisor. But there's all these other people I'm talking to, foster parent, bio family, etc., where I'm like, it would be really easy to be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah mentioned, I was like, I'm not supposed to be doing that. That's really tough. And so in my anxious state, especially because these situations are anxiety inducing for me, because I'm like, these are strangers. I want them to trust me. I want them to, know that I care and like connect so that I can also get information that I need, insight that I need, because this child needs me to advocate for them, whatever. It's like really, I have to be so careful about not doing that thing of like overindulging information about other people, about that situation.
So challenging.
It's hard, but the rest of it's really, really cool. But that part in particular definitely harkens to what we're talking about of like word vomit. I mean, I do it with guests, be like, oh, let me tell you everything about The Bachelor. It's like, well, I probably didn't need to tell. Yeah.
It's amazing how I think when we pause in life, how you're able to recognize what state is like true to you and what state is anxious. And I'm realizing, obviously I'm like, I know I have my bipolar, my anxiety, like all that stuff, but I think the current world we live in, because everything is so 24/7 and so busy, it does not help with the swiftness of which we all are trying to operate. And I think we all operate, so many of us operate in an anxious state in so many ways. And I think that then moves into conversation and relationships too.
Yeah.
And that can translate then into even like romantic relationships where we're operating in this kind of like buzzy state instead of just like allowing a pause, not having to make swift decisions. And
I mean, it's one of the coolest things about this podcast is like we pretty much sit, I mean, we have to have our phone and stuff for notes and like all that kind of thing, but we pretty much sit down at about 4 hours a week at least to just talk and connect with each other.
It's pretty amazing.
Distraction free.
It's so funny. I was listening to, I think it was Take Your Shoes Off podcast, Rick Glassman, one of my ultimate faves. And and they were having that exact conversation like a few days ago where it was like, isn't it crazy how like this is the only time every week that like we don't even look at our phones and we're just full human interaction when they're podcasting. And I'm like, oh my God, if it wouldn't be for the podcast, how good would I be about taking time to just like really like turning the phone over?
I know. Turning the phone over, right? So you can't see it, see the notification
and
pop
just
up.
being fully present.
I know.
And then also thoughtful to a certain extent about what's coming out of your mouth.
Right. Because there is some awareness that
there is some awareness.
A lot
Sometimes
of people are gonna
not as
listen
much
to
as
it.
I wish I had, but
Yeah.
there is a little more awareness.
Yeah. There definitely is. Because it's like, just thinking over the last couple years, like there is a difference between the conversations we have when we're not recording and when we are.
Sure.
And that's, like you're saying, healthy boundaries of like choosing what to share, not to share. So there definitely is that awareness, but it's still, you know, you're picking a freaking topic to sit and chat about with another person for hours on end.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And that's what's interesting to do with your partner too. Like Gray and I were recently talking like, oh, well, maybe revive the Patreon. Like, I mean, it was one thing to recap my season of The Bachelor, but there is something to be said about sitting down and like flipping on a mic and being like, let's take it away. Let's just chat with each other and see what comes up, for better or worse.
There's a lot of healing, I think, in that.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, I don't know how to handle the thing either, though, of like when you, back to what I originally asked, like when I'm share vulnerably and the other person, like what we've been struggling with, and I don't really have an answer for, and I'm sure you struggle with this with Evan, I'll like share vulnerably, and then his feeling is like, I'm failing her. Like if she feels so like sad and alone right now, she's sharing about that, and then his defense immediately goes up because it's like, I don't want you to feel that way. Why did I, like, kind of like that self thing of like, I'm so stupid. Like, why did I make her feel that way?
Yeah.
Or that might not be what's communicated, but that's what's being felt inside of like, I never do enough. And then that's where the thing comes up of like, but I did this and this and this and this and this. And then you're frustrated because you're like, I don't fucking care about those things. Not to say I don't appreciate them, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about how I felt, you know, emotionally neglected when this happened. And they're like,
Yeah.
but I'm trying so hard.
I guess it's like what at one point Vanessa was saying in the last episode about how there's this, like, for herself, there's this from past traumas and relationships and childhood and everything where there's like, oh, if I do something wrong, then I'm a bad person. And I feel like that's always the challenge, especially like, you know, in the ways that we were raised, where it's like, oh, sinful, I'm a sinful person, I'm bad. And being like, no, when that person responds to me in that way, they're feeling right now like a bad person, which is not what I'm attempting to have them feel like. But their defensiveness is because they feel like they're a bad person because they hurt me. And like, how am I going to then respond to that?
Do you feel that way ever in like the heat of stuff?
Like I feel like a bad person?
Yeah.
Oh, constantly. Like I constantly go back to, and I don't think it's like a conscious where I'm like,
Totally.
you're bad.
Totally.
But it's definitely like, if I do something that hurts Evan, or he feels, you know, unseen in a certain way, and he tells me that, my immediate gut reaction is to be like, there you go again. Bad.
Fucking
Messed
it
it up.
up.
Fucked it up. Typical. You know, and that's where I go. Self-flagellation of being like, you know, and then, but the response is then typically defensive. It's not like, I know I'm always wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not the, if I were to respond that way, that's a whole
No, I'm
other
always wrong. It's
thing. Yeah. You're like,
Because then you're making it about you. It's like,
yep. But I think if I'm more, again, and I think this is about slowing down too. If in an argument
It's a lot
or a
of the
conversation,
solution.
I share vulnerably with Evan, and let's just say he gets defensive. If I'm able to pause in my emotions and go, he's defensive right now because he is disappointed in himself and he feels like a bad person. I feel like I then can deal with that woundedness of feeling like I was vulnerably sharing.
For sure.
I feel like I'll be able to process it more clearly because I'm then actually, I'm not just taking his defensiveness at face value. I'm going, oh, I know when I do this as a response, it's because I feel disappointed in myself.
Right. So
shame.
then if you can, which then sometimes I've hit a roadblock with that because then I address it in the wrong way where I go, like you don't have to feel like ashamed or whatever. And then he's like, I'm not feeling ashamed. I'm like, oh, sorry. Like that's just what I thought you would feel right now. We're feeling right now. But I think I think that if you can then in that moment make that person feel seen and whatever it is they're going through under the top layer of like defensiveness or whatever, then their feeling can get addressed. Which I know there's always an internet dialogue of like, well, why should he needs to whatever, it's like sometimes you just gotta get some person seen so that you can get to the point where everyone feels seen. Because then usually if you can address that person's underlying emotions and if they can really feel like they are being seen in that moment, then their walls come down. And then when you show again that vulnerable part of you, they're in a space to then be like, then you can connect if you both, one person can get seen.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's like, of course, there are situations where that's
There's
not
always something.
Of course, there's situations where that is not what should be happening. But like, yeah, I'm coming just from a space of like, for example, mine and Evan's relationship, where it's like I feel like overall pretty healthy, love each other, want to make it work.
Well, and also
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also
want him to feel seen, and I know he wants me to feel seen.
I feel like there's a myth too where it's like, oh, I'm more emotionally advanced than he is. And granted, I've seen a lot of loved ones in my day get in relationships with people where I'm like, no, dude, they are like not on your level of like knowing emotional maturity, all that stuff. Don't do it. But also that naturally does happen like in relationships where one person starts going to therapy, or like one person is going through an upswing in their life and they're getting more revelations about themselves. Like there's gonna be a lot of times where you're not like on the same plane of like being able, or even just life circumstances. Maybe your partner just lost their job and they have no capacity. They have no capacity to emotionally deal. Like basically my therapist, because of course I think I talked about this on that episode, but on the last episode with John and Vanessa, there's also always the thing too where you're like, I've been trying my best for 5 weeks now, and he's not changing. It's like
totally. Where it's
gonna take patience.
It's gonna take a while.
But I remember my therapist telling me like, oh, well, try to hear as much as you can, like the subtext of like how he's feeling. Like you said, he could say the defensive things, but try to get under there and hear what's really happening. Of like, I feel like I'm not good enough for you, whatever, and then validate that person. And she's like, if you can keep doing that, like if it may be one-sided work into the relationship in that way, but like over time you will, like, things will shift, or it may get to a place where you see that you have outgrown this person or whatever. But I still felt like that was good advice, because like oftentimes I don't try very hard to like try to hear I'm only thinking about myself, right? I'm only thinking about my unmet needs, where I'm like, this is about me,
Totally.
Which it is, but it is
I also, when you were talking about like sometimes people just don't have that capacity in that moment, that season of life. I said this I think once before on the podcast and got a good amount of shit for it, but I believe this wholeheartedly. If you're in a relationship where you're safe, right? Emotionally, physically.
Yeah.
There will be, like they always say, both parties have to give 100. And I'm like,
I don't believe that.
I think that most parties, it's like, okay, well, first of all, both parties can give 50. But then sometimes one party's giving 80 and the partner can only give 20. And sometimes it's
do agree with
sometimes
that.
it's 50-50, sometimes it's 0-100. And now
When is it always going to be perfectly 50-50? Like, come on.
and my thing is this, now if then there's a pattern where you're like, I'm always at 100 and my partner's at 0, it's a very different case. But like, I know for myself, and I can only really speak into my relationship, but it's like, I know for a long time at the top of our marriage, my capacity was low. Evan was given like 80 and I was 20. And then a few years into the relationship, he was having some really hard growth curves, and I was really starting to grow in my life and doing a lot of self-work and all this. And I was then we swapped, and I was given 80 and he was at 20. And then for a while we were 50-50 and we were both like, but then time shifted. And then like, I mean, it's a dance.
Of course.
It's a dance. And so that's why it's like a scoreboard in a relationship is always a bad idea.
Yeah. Also, you're going to be scoring things differently. So you're going to be like, my scoreboard says this. They're like, well, mine says this, you know? And you're like, someone hasn't been keeping score right. And it's probably you.
Totally. No, it's so true. Everyone's scoreboard looks so different. But it's just like, yeah, if you're in a place where you are in a safe relationship and you want to ultimately make it work, like there are a lot of times that it's not going to be 50-50.
Oh my God, for sure. Also, like, you know, I was just thinking as you were saying that, like, people have different childhood experiences. One might have had a pretty breezy upbringing. Another person might have a whole bunch of issues. And like, those are things that are going to get processed over time. And yeah, there's going to be unequal loads that will have to be carried. And that is just part of life. I mean, we've had those conversations with people bringing friendship questions into the mix, you know, where we're like, has this been your whole relationship, or is this bitch going through a hard time and she needs you to lean on right now?
If this is your whole relationship, then it's time to set a boundary and say bye.
If this is the last 6 months, homegirl's going through a rough time,
then, you know.
You can still set boundaries, you know, because you can't take on, doesn't matter if it's your partner or if you're a friend, you can't take on like everything. And that's the thing in relationships too, right? That's what I'm saying.
You have to set, even in like a lifelong
husband and wife,
husband and wife, partnered relationship, you have to set boundaries. It's like there are times when Evan is really going through it, and I have had to. There's what was one particular season where I'd never seen him struggle emotionally like that before. And I was trying to be there for him in every way I could. But it hit a point where I had to look at him and I had to say, I'm at my capacity.
You got to find someone else to help you carry this load right now.
I'm at my capacity now. And it was a painful conversation because it did hurt him.
Yeah.
Because he then felt like, oh my God, I'm too much.
I'm burdening her.
And I told him, I'm like, listen, you're not too much. But I also only have a capacity right now. And so now I have to honor that capacity. And now this is like when you have a therapist or a friend or whatever that is come in. And so you could have more people in your life to share that space for you.
Yeah.
You know?
I think unfortunately that's really common in hetero relationships too. And like I've had that happen in past relationships as well, where like one in particular I can think of where I was like, I can't hold all this for you. Like, and you're also, I remember in this particular relationship, it was also like, he didn't want any of his friends to know about all these things he's struggling with his family and all that. And I'm like, dude, these are your best, like, lifelong friends. Like, and you're concealing this from them. Like, not only is that not fair to like your relationship with them, but it's like also not fair to me because I became like the keeper of secrets, you know, like,
oh my gosh,
and the keeper of everything. And I was like, dude, this is too much pressure for me.
Oh my God, yeah. And I know for myself, I was like, I then had to battle the own voice in my head that was like, you're being selfish, because like I just had to look back and go, oh my God, the amount of times that, especially through a lot of my shit, that Evan always held space for me in so many ways. And I'm like, oh my God. And now I have to tell him that like I'm at capacity. And then I felt like, oh my God, am I being selfish? But ultimately we had a conversation where it was like, he loved me so much in those moments that he held all for me, but it actually wasn't ultimately good. He wanted to do the right thing and he held it, but it burnt him out. It wasn't good for our relationship. And ultimately then when we honored our capacity and communicated that with each other, it ended up being better for our relationship in general, you know, but it was, but it doesn't mean it's not 100 painful conversations in between.
Would you have an answer to simple, neat answer to put into the, I put on my question box last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess.
That was such a fire Instagram
It was really,
session.
really fun series. Yeah. I said, what is your, what do you struggle with most in your relationship? Would you be able to put an answer into that answer box? Because I was like, actually, the funny thing is that I was actually surprised by
people's ability to
not only
I'm
that.
like, oh man, I don't know.
I said this on the episode with John and Vanessa. Like, I got hundreds of responses within like 3 minutes, and I was like, whoa, trust me, we got problems, but I don't know if I could immediately like put it down on.
I guess I just wouldn't necessarily know how to verbalize it.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. Like, and then what was also wild to me is how many like friends responded to it.
You're like, oh shit, now I know.
No, there was definitely some people where I was like, oh my God, you know, like we net blah blah blah. He always da 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 da. And I was like,
and you're like, oh gosh, well, you know, I can't see who sends this, right?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God. But like a lot of friends like a decent amount of friends responded to it. And then one of my friends said the fact that he bites his nails, he's perfect in every other way, though. Honestly, like, what? Love her. But yeah, just got so many interesting answers. You know, like another friend of mine said completely opposite view of finances. Like, and these are like really interesting things to me. Like, especially it's very interesting when there's certain things that you really don't struggle with at all in your relationship. And then like one person said, and one of our friends said, we have radically different belief systems. And I'm like,
wowzers.
Whoa, like,
yeah,
wild.
Yeah, and like, what does that look like? Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people have that.
Yeah,
I know like finances is a big one for us.
Really? Is that something you guys have conflict on?
Oh my God.
I actually did not know that.
Oh my God. Yes. It's one of the main things that we'll argue about.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think you're certainly, according to my question box, you're not alone in that.
Yeah, because we were raised so differently in such like different households that like the way that we
you're like, this is a
interact
necessity
with money. Talking about money makes me super anxious because I would see tons of anxiety with my parents when money got brought up, and they also the idea of any sort of like investment or anything, it was very much like you sit on it and you never touch it, whatever. And Evan was like, went to finance school, was raised by a father who was in the financial biz, so he's like, no, you gotta like, you know, like put some here and find it. And I'm like, you gotta sit on it like Scrooge McDuck. Like I'm freaking out about that. And having to like trust and like, and he's, you know, there's never even been a situation, honestly, in our relationship so far, knock on wood, where there was like a big blow it. But I want it anytime a money conversation gets brought up. I'm like, we can talk about it tomorrow. And he's like, no, we have to talk about it now. Lately, we've been spending too much money on takeout. And it's draining this. We need to stop. And I go, well, tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Like, I mean, any type of money talk. So whether it's like we need to save more or let's invest here. Anything. Yeah. I don't want to have the conversation. And he's like, we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not up to me. We're partners.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reign with the cash.
Yeah.
And make all the calls.
Like, but I want you to. And then that's what they were talking about. John and Vanessa, over-functioning, under-functioning in certain areas. I'm like, just do it.
And he's like, no, this is ours.
Yeah, because also you need to face it. Yeah.
I need to face it.
Woo!
Yikes, baby. So yeah, could you not have one that like...
well, you know what? There's one that I just thought about as you were talking about this with the money thing. It's maybe not like the main thing we deal with in conflict, but it's certainly a difference. Like, there are certain things, like what I was talking about with John and Vanessa, like we've had a lot of conflict around like around sex because of a lot of processing and a lot of a lot of different factors. So that's definitely one that I would say creates the most, because also sex is very emotionally heightened, like an emotionally heightened topic.
What are you talking
Kind of
about?
like money.
Like, huh? What are you talking about? Sex?
It's charged.
Emotional charge?
So that's definitely one that I would say brings up when there's discussions or conflict. That's definitely one that brings a lot of like 0 to 100 real quick. Emotional shutdown, emotional blackout, just being like, and then, of course, there are always random conversations that turn into a thing where suddenly, like, you're like, want to punch a wall, and you're like so frustrated, like, those feelings where you've just been so frustrated where you're literally like being so dramatic and you're like, I'm literally gonna tear my hair out in front of you, or like beat my hand into the ground to like, so you can see how
When
unhinged
you're like,
I am. It's
feel
usually just when I feel like I'm not getting what I want to communicate.
that ding ding ding. So I was just about to say, it's like when you're like, you're not getting what I'm saying.
And then you're just like, and then you go into full toddler.
You see red.
You go into full toddler see me mode too, right? Like, I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna
doing
like
this in front of the 13-year-old girls. Hello, like an absolute fool.
Yes, that's just like I would say just that feeling is definitely like the hardest thing to navigate, and that's usually not. It's just triggered by like not feeling seen. I guess that's like a pretty general thing.
For sure.
But then I had one like the money thing where I thought, oh, this is a good one. Which Gray has changed a lot, but we approach things differently. Kind of what Jessica Stone was saying, where like I'm like into the mist, kind of like, Gray we have to talk about like an investment thing. And literally like my approach is like, I'm not sure about the vibe. Like, we should do some tarot and you should really think on this, and Gray's like, but logically, like, this all makes sense. Like, this is what we need to do. A plus, 1 + 2 = 3. And I'm like, but I don't know. Like, what if the 2 is really not a 2? I'm feeling something off here, like.
Yeah. And when you feel that in your spirit, you're like, I can't go against that.
I know. And so that's kind of like or when he was gone in Mexico, oh my God, Jess, that's the whole time when we had the conversation with Jessica Stone. I was having all these conversations with people. And so he comes home and it's been like the longest 10 days ever. Cause I'm like, he says something. I'm like, well, I don't know. I think I'm not doing that anymore. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I just think I need to go silent for 4 months or whatever, And he's like, what? And I'm like, I'm just done with that. It's a new era, And he's like, what are you like? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's kind of an issue sometimes where I have the way that I do things. I have the way that I come to my conclusions. I have the way that I parent, that I keep the home, that I make choices for what's to come next in life. And he's pretty good about writing that out. But there are definitely some times where he's just like,
hold on a second.
Yeah. Or he's like, what? Like, no, we need to do this. And I'm just like, no.
When he says, hold on, does your like anxiety flare up?
Yeah, I'm just like, no,
because you've already made the decision in your mind.
Exactly. That's what's kind of hard. But he's like, are you sure about that? I'm like, I just don't know. Ugh. Yeah. I'm like all frustrated. That had that happen when he got back, and he's like, well, but maybe we should really consider like maybe you can just cut back on ads like 2 to. I'm like, no.
Yeah, and you're like, no, because you already made the decision.
So that's something that I guess is like it's not an active continuous point of conflict, but it's definitely something that can be difficult where I'm just like, yeah,
of course.
And I'm and I know you and Evan are kind of similar too. It's like we're spiritual, we're feely, it's feminine in that way, and they're very like rigid, logical, masculine, practical.
No, when you were saying that, I was like, oh man, this really like I definitely can resonate with that. That's for sure.
Yeah, with everything from having children and procreating to everything, we're just like, I'm feeling it.
Well, and I think too that might have to do then with communication styles, right? Where like we are kind of like we can be wired in the way where we'll process something internally and not be maybe sharing it for a while, and then all of a sudden when like I make up my mind and someone questions it, I'm like, do you know how many stones I have unturned
They're like,
or overturned to know that this is the right path for me? I have made up my mind, baby.
Right,
Like, this is what I'm doing. And
Right.
so, like, yeah, sometimes when Evan will be like, well, hold on a second. Like, let's take a pause and think about what, this could also then affect this, this, and this. And I'm just like, how dare you question my process? Okay.
Right.
Like, I know myself and I
Right.
know that this is what I need to do to bring ultimate peace. Okay.
Well, and partners can get, like, I'm sure, I know Evan really gets you, but there's also things with, like, girlfriends where you and I can, like, say 2 words and we're like, and
As
you're
we
like,
know.
say no more.
Yeah.
I get it.
And
It's
we
like, that's like kind of that, like, weird, I think it's like this weird womanly shit, where you're just kind of like, mm-hmm.
You're like, I know, like you said, the 2 words and that's it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know exactly what wavelength you're on.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be another word exchanged. And so then when man comes in and goes, hold on.
Right. It's
I'm just
even
like,
as simple as being like, I just didn't feel it. It doesn't align.
and I
I'm
go,
not
got it,
feeling
girl.
it.
Fully get it. If you're not feeling aligned, then you throw that out the window. That's garbage.
But that is actually something that I feel like put my male partner, my partner, male or not, my partner does not get. Mm-hmm. And also, I was listening to some astrologer talking about me. I've been listening. I met this astrologer on the, like, at the wedding thing. She was like all drunk, someone's cousin.
You find them.
They find me. And,
There you go.
she was like looking at my chart. She's like, October 31st, this is going to be squared 25 degrees. Do you know what that means? And I'm like, no. And she's like, the toasts are about to happen. Find me after the toast. I couldn't find her. So I don't know what, but anyway, like, astrologers, like, have been coming out of the woodwork
day of
to find me and
Halloween.
tell me. I know. But this astrologer contacted me, was telling me about my chart. And she was just like, oh, she said something interesting I hadn't thought about. She goes, or maybe Jessica Leonardo said this earlier this year. She said, you were raised, that was accepted in the way you were raised, which was true. My parents, if I say, like, it's not sitting well with me, doesn't feel right in my spirit. My parents, to this day, like, they fully are, unless I was to say that about getting divorced with Gray or something like that, then they would probably be like, that's the devil.
It's Satan's hand.
Yeah, none of that. But if I was to say, about a financial decision, about a move, about anything like that,
They
if I
accept
was to
that.
say, I feel it in my spirit or whatever, full respect for that, which is really
Yeah, so
interesting.
then when your partner goes, oh, hold on a second.
Do your parents, are they with that or no?
Well, so I think I have the reverse.
Yeah.
My parents are the opposite.
Yeah.
If I were to be like, it doesn't sit well, they'd be like, bitch, what the fuck? This is the way you do it. It's A to B to C.
Right, you're like, I feel like we should sell the property right now. And they're like, it's in a decline, we're in a recession.
No, there's
You're
no
not
way.
going
If
to
I
get
was
top
like,
dollar for your house.
I feel like maybe it's time for me to like take a year off college and like go and study over here. And they'd be like, are you out of your mind? No, like that's not. And Evan is more like logic based in that way.
Practical.
And his family was the exact same way in accordance to that. So that's how he's a little more wired. And I was always like the weirdo in my family. And so I think I go I kick and scream and I go, no, I'm an adult now.
Somebody pay attention to me. I know what I need.
I'm like having a little bit of a temper tantrum too, because I'm a little bit like, I'm an adult now. Like I know what's right for me. And sometimes they would say they knew it was right for me and it wasn't right for me because we're very different people.
Yeah.
And I have good intuition and I want to trust my intuition. And when I go against my intuition and things go wrong, then I get mad and like frustrated with myself and all that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's a little bit of reverse.
Yeah, because when you're saying that, like my parents, I dropped out of school. I went back to school. I went out of school. I went to school switched my major to art. It was like all over the place. And they were always really like supportive of that, which I really, really appreciate. It's definitely, I don't know what it would be like if I was with parents that didn't let me move in that way.
Yeah. Love you, mom and dad. But it was
Y'all weren't great about that.
they're just so not wired that way. So
Yeah.
they just didn't get it. It was like they don't have that. I mean, I'm sure they do, but it's not something
It's
that
turned off.
or it's just not something that they necessarily hold value with, is that like certain intuition or whatever. And some of us are like, no, this is how I have to live my life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I think I kind of, if someone shuts it down, and by no means does Evan shut it down, but he'll just be like, hey, like, have you thought about this?
If he questions
and
it at
like,
all.
Yeah! Like, you don't know. Like, I hop on that quick. And he'll be like, babe, I just wanted to, throw out, like, some potential, like, I mean, honestly, good thoughts that he'll throw out.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hear it sometimes.
Yeah. Do you think everyone has that intuition? Like, do you think everyone has intuition like that? Or what do you think about that?
You know what? So that is an interesting question. I feel like everyone obviously has intuition.
Right.
But I think maybe...
there's always been people throughout time that are more attuned to it, right?
I think some people for sure are just more in tune with their intuition, just like how some people are more in tune with their body.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
I'm not in tune with my body at all. But my intuition I'm in tune with. And I think different people just have different strengths in that way.
I'm always curious about what, I'm always trying to put things in terms of like, well, what if it was stripped back? Like, would you be in your tune with your body if you were like living on the land where you're like, would you? But maybe you would, maybe you still would be less so than other people around you. I'm always really curious about that kind of thing.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And I'm sure there are always people in communities who are the ones being like, I know you all feel in your spirit like we need to take a break right now, but we don't have enough corn from the harvest in order to relax before winter. Like there's always those people driving things, I guess, with more analytical minds. It was so funny. I had a conversation with Abby, who'd been on our podcast before, and he was like, imagine how little anxiety people had in the past. And I was like, bitch, no, are you kidding me? Everything was more monumental. A bear could come in and eat your infant.
Abby, but no.
Yeah, I was like, if you didn't get a lot of rain that spring, you guys just might all starve that winter. That's like massive anxiety.
Also,
I was
even thinking about being on a ship, and you have to use the stars to know where you're going in the goddamn ocean because there weren't any radios or anything. And then all of a sudden, when there's cloud coverage for 3 days and you can't see the stars, you have no idea where you are. That's serious anxiety. We just have different types of anxiety.
Yeah.
Just different versions.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, actually, I think the issue with our anxiety now is that, when we're on our phone too much, all of a sudden we wake up with our heart beating out of our chest like a bear is going to steal our infant from the tent. But there's nothing going on. Yeah. Like, everything's getting misplaced. But I'm like, no, of course people had anxiety. What are you talking about? It was about monumental life and death things.
Jeez, no.
Anyway. That was an aside. Well, we really got into it. It's now been...
Okay, well, I'm coming next to you.
I was about to wrap it anyway with memory card space.
If you're watching on the YouTube, the memory card on my camera just died, so I guess it's time for us to wrap it up.
And with that, broads, chat soon.
Thanks for this chat. Chat soon, broads. We love you. Oh my god, tune in. Finale part 1. Hey. Oh my god, that's so funny.